All right, so next up, I go through all of the units that you can buy in Twilight Imperium. Are you someone who likes plastic pieces? You're tired of those just shapeless blocks or meeples or whatnot, and you want some really nice, fine crafted plastic. Ooh, this is the game for you. Check this out. Okay, so let's go over all the ships that are available in Twilight Imperium. I'll start with the small ones first. These are just the fighters, as you see here. There are several different colors to choose from. I'm just choosing red, for example. But these are the fighters. They only cost 1 resource, and you get 2 fighters for every resource. So that's pretty cool. Now, the cost is very cheap, but in battle, they're kind of hard to get hits on. On a 10-sided die, where the 0 indicates 10, you have to roll a 9 or 10 to get a hit, for the fighter to get a hit. Anything else is a miss. All right, so on the other skill end of that are ground forces. Ground forces are things you'll use to claim planets. So for instance, if I land on a planet, I'm going to put a ground force there and say, this is my place. All right, but if you want to fight ground forces in ground combat, by the way, to buy them, first off, they're the same as the fighters. They cost 1 resource, and you get 2 ground troops for every 1 resource that you use. So you can stack up on ground troops. Now, in ground troops, to get a hit for them, they have to roll an 8 or higher to get hit. So there's your ground troops there. Okay, folks, while editing the video, I realized I left something out. Basically, fighters and ground forces are basically limitless. These are little tokens you can use once you run out of your own little plastic pieces, and they give you a whole bag of them if you get all the expansions. Some of these, as you see, indicate 3 ground troops or 3 fighters. Those come in the expansions there, but you can keep buying ground troops and fighters for as long as you have these tokens. So those 2 are limitless. The next one is PDS, Planetary Defense Systems. As you see here, that's what they are. They cost basically 2 resources to build, and in battle they're a 6 or higher. You have to roll a 6 or higher to get a hit with a PDS cannon. Now, of course, you can always upgrade your PDS cannons later on in the game with technology, which I'll explain later. Now, why would you want a PDS? It just sits on the planet. That's kind of boring, right? There's another ship in the game that can really bombard a planet by shooting down on it from the space. However, if you have a PDS cannon on that planet, it cannot, it basically puts a protective shield, I should say, around the planet. Also, before an invasion combat starts, your PDS cannon gets to fire at the opposition. And with a 6 or higher, it's probably going to get a hit. So you can probably hit a good ship. In fact, if it's only a carrier and you hit the carrier, woo! Your PDS basically saved the day. We'll talk more about that when we get into ground force combat. Next ones are space docks I want to talk about. Space docks cost about 4 resources to build. They do not fight, they're just docks in space. This is how you will build basically your entire fleet. Now you have 4 of these per group, so per player. So you have 4 space docks you can put up randomly around planets that you own who will help you build new forces. To build a space dock, again, is a cost of 4. Now it can hold 3 fighters to defend itself. So, if someone tries to attack the planet with a space dock, you at least have some fighters on hand to fight. But they cannot fight, space docks can't, on their own. A lot of times they're going to get destroyed. So the next one is a carrier. And as you see here, they carry stuff like PDSs, ground forces, and fighters. And they carry them around to their own place because, of course, fighters cannot fly on their own. They need a carrier unless you have some special tech, which I'll talk about later. But anyway, they can carry up to 6 units. So any number of these you can mix and match, and they will carry it from planet to planet or wherever with them if they're carrying a bunch of fighters for battle. The cost of a carrier is 3 resources. They move only 1 square, hectagon, per turn. Now, of course, you can get tech to make them move faster. In battle, they're not much help to you. They're about the same help as fighters. They are a 9 or a 10. You have to roll a 9 or 10 to get a hit. The next one, and this is from one of the expansions, is called a Mechanized Unit. And as you can see, that is just a fancy word for tank. And these tanks are really, really cool. But the mechanized unit costs 2 resources, and in battle, it is a 6 or higher to get a hit. But get this, you get to roll 2 die to see if you can get hits. So let's say I rolled it, and in this case, I rolled a 9 or an 8. Those were 2 hits. So that's 2 hits on 1 roll. Not bad when you have a tank. Of course, these, mechanized units are much better than ground units. Of course, they cost a lot more too, but that is a way to defend your planet, right? They also can get carried on with carriers. Carriers can move mechanized units around. Those do count as a unit, of course, to hop from planet to planet. The next one we're going to talk about are these little cruisers here. Now, cruisers are a really neat ship. It costs 1 resource, and it can move 2 spaces per turn. So they're kind of quick already off the bat. And in battle, you have to roll a 7 or higher on the die to get a hit with a cruiser. Next one after that would be a destroyer. They only cost 1 resource. They can also move 2 spaces, which is really cool. And in battle, you have to roll a 9 or 10 to get a hit. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, oh, Matt, what's the difference in just getting a fighter? Because I can get 2 fighters for the cost of 1 destroyer. Well, remember one thing. Destroyers can move 2 spaces, fight on their own, and fighters cannot move on their own. They can't move 2 spaces. So you have extra movement and agility with a destroyer. But even on top of that, in a battle, before you have a battle with someone, and we'll talk about warfare later on, but in battle, destroyers actually get to fire first. So before the battle even begins, you can roll the die. If you roll a 9 or 10, you already hit one of your opponent's spaceships. And they could be without ships in the battle. So they get to basically fire first in every battle, which is kind of neat and kind of a good advantage. So they really balance it out to whether you want 2 fighters or 1 destroyer. Next vehicle is a Dreadnought. All right, so as you see, Dreadnoughts, they cost about 5 resources to build. They're very expensive. They can only move 1 square or 1 hectagon per turn, unless you have tech that makes them move faster. And then in battle, they are a 5 and higher to get a hit. So these Star Destroyers, Dreadnoughts, really can pack a punch. Now they can also bombard planets not protected by the PDS. So if you don't have public defense system on your planet, that's going to be bad, because when they come to invade, they can bombard the planet first to see if they can get any hits on some of those ground troops before you go to invade. Or maybe clear them out altogether if you have plenty, because for each bombardment, for each Star Destroyer, Dreadnought, for each Dreadnought you have over the planet, you get to roll that many die. On a 5 or whatever, they get to hit one of those ground troops. So that could be really big there. Next up, and this is from the expansion, is a flagship. Now, I can't give you the cost or movement or speed because they're all different depending on what species you are. These do cost a whole lot. They do pack a huge punch. It's a flagship. And to be honest, this is one great reason why you should get the expansions, because flagships are definitely worth your time. Anyway, that's the flagship there. And now we move on to the biggest, the creme a la creme, the War Sun. Now, as you see, the War Sun, it's going to cost the most. It costs 12 resources to build. It can move 2 hectagons at a time. And in battle, it's a 3 or higher to get a hit. So it's almost guaranteed to get a hit. But wait, on top of that, you get to roll 3 die. So it can get up to 3 hits per turn, which is huge. So to build this, though, is going to be a lot. Now, the cost is, relatively easy once you acquire enough planets and the resources to build it. But you have to assemble the correct technology to build a Death Star. War Sun. But War Suns are super powerful. It'll take you half the game to get the technology to build one. Once you finally do, though, you are a force to be reckoned with. The War Sun don't play. And if anyone has a War Sun, everyone is scared of you when it comes to battle. Because, look at this. You have to roll 3 or higher on 3 die. You get 3 hits. That could wipe out several armies in one shot. So War Suns are really, really powerful. Now, the thing about War Suns and flagships and Dreadnoughts is that they can take 2 damage hits in battle. If they ever took a damage in battle, they would flip over to the side to indicate they were damaged. If they got hit again, you'd remove them from the game. So that's a big deal about these ships. They can take 2 damage hits before being destroyed, while the rest of them get destroyed after the first hit. And we'll talk more about this when we talk about warfare. There's also even a rule when it comes to War Suns that, and this is optional here, it's an optional rule they say, where you can do a sabotage run with fighters, as many fighters as you want, against an opposing War Sun. Yes, this is a Death Star run. Now, you commit X amount of fighters to destroy the War Sun. And however many fighters you got to roll the die. Now, on a 9 or 10, they break through the inner, inside the War Sun. Now, if any fighter fails to roll a 9 or 10, they are destroyed upon impact of the War Sun. They didn't make it there. Any fighters left over, like let's say I put 6 fighters against this War Sun to make a sabotage run, and only 3 get in. Well, now, out of those 3, they have to roll a perfect 10, which is the 0. They have to roll a perfect 10 to destroy the War Sun. If they don't roll a 10 on that one turn, they are destroyed. So it's an easy way, easier way, risky way to kill the War Sun. Now, we've actually added an additional rule to this, because we do like sabotage runs, but we hate that you've waited basically your entire game to build a War Sun, and it can be so easily destroyed by a sabotage run that we said, yeah, let's keep the sabotage rule because we like that. But if all your fighters fail, then your War Sun gets a free hit. They get to fire for free. Not before battle begins, they get a free, volley shot. And of course, with a free shot, let's see. In this example, how many hits would they get? 4, 5. They would get 3 hits automatically before the war even started. So they get like a free shot if you fail the Death Star run. War Sun, sabotage run. So that would basically heighten the, I would say, danger and risk of making a sabotage run. I don't know how many other people use this rule. I can't imagine anyone basically plays with that rule because, like I said, War Suns are very treasured. They're super hard to get, and it would suck to have one little measly fighter destroy your entire War Sun, something you've worked up the entire game to get. So those are your ships. Alright, so those are all the units that you can get in Twilight Imperium. Isn't that blow your mind amazing? From ground troops and mechanized units to fighters, cruisers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, carriers, PDS units, flagships, you name it. Even bringing the big old War Sun into battle is very intimidating. And that's what those battles turn into when you have so many pieces. It feels like you are building an army and a navy, and you are this powerful force to be reckoned with. And you should see how personal it gets with some people. I've had my flagship destroyed maybe 3 times in one game. Man, I started naming that flagship. I christened the USS You Suck. Go out there and kick some butt. People really get into it. And then you keep forgetting what's important. Like I saw someone reach Mechanized Rex, and all they had in their carrier was fighters, because they knew they had to fight people along the way to get there, but then they didn't have any ground troops. When they got there, like, oh man. Or the exact opposite. They get all the way there with ground troops, and then they get attacked in the air, and they didn't have any fighters to defend them. It is all about checks and balances. That's what this entire game is based on. But they also give you little cheat sheets, little cards. I think it's in the second expansion, where it tells you how much each costs, what the battle is. You also have those on your species race cards, so you can see that as well if you kind of get lost. So it's very easy to keep up with and follow how much it costs and what they are worth in battle. And like I said, if you like plastic pieces, then you should probably be already on Amazon.com or CoolStuff.Inc. looking up going, how much is this again? It's a great game. And I hope to show you more in the next video.